this session, comparing video delivered with HTML5, Flash Player, and Silverlight, will be delivered in light of yesterday's late news, and this morning's early news, about Flash Player development ceasing on mobile devices from an Adobe perspective and their engineering teams. My name is Robert Reinhardt. You may have seen me tweeting already at this event under my very old Flash Freaker ID, and the hashtags for this event, which funnily enough are not printed anywhere on the program literature. It's on the site, but SM West and HTML5 video. Which consequently, there's a lot of posts out there just on HTML5 video that have nothing to do with the summit. That's a common hashtag that isn't just for the event, but I guess the event's trying to usurp it. We'll see what happens. Okay, so you already know this, the session description. You're sitting here. I'm giving you my contact information up front. I know how these conferences work. You might drift out, go to an exhibitor or whatever, but if you have any questions about anything I present, if you want to argue with me, whatever, you can email me at robert@themakers.com. My two Twitter IDs are Flash Freaker, where I sort of, will tweet about anything, including like I'm in my underwear or whatever. VideoRx is my more professional feed related to the services that I offer through VideoRx. I have rants on probablystjustme.com, where I try to, I'll probably have one about this latest announcement and how badly Adobe's PR machine didn't contextualize that announcement better. But anyway, that's some quick information there. Just some quick background on me. I'm primarily known in the community for writing books. I wrote the Flash Bible in its first 8 editions. I started switching back to more video-specific titles. When I stopped writing, I was writing about video within Flash. Video's always been my forte in terms of a subject matter expertise. My background's in film and photography, so I've always naturally gravitated to it. But I just don't write books. I mean, I've always had both feet into the real world, deploying solutions for my clients. I've worked as a full-time salary position at ad agencies like Schematic. They've been my clients as a consultant, and I continue to build usually what I would call edge case scenarios for, and when I say edge, I don't mean like origin edge server, just like, extreme things with video, right? Things that aren't your, I need video on a blog post, right? Like a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is for real business case scenarios, and I don't want to get into sort of any kind of heated discussion that makes HTML5 look bad or Flash look bad or any technology. I think it's, as a solutions architect, I have to present my clients with a solution that's going to work for what they want out of an engagement, and to really just approach it from that and not try and have any play favorites to something just because, it's a standard, we should be using it. There's all sorts of things that we should do in life, but we don't. So I don't really like to just get pragmatic about a standard if it doesn't deliver on a promise or all the promises that my clients expect from a specific engagement. So that's last night's news hasn't helped this slide, that's for sure. We are still in a snafu. We've got also, it's not one of the questions I wanted to ask the leadership roundtable yesterday in the summit was, well, has HTML5 video made video production less expensive or more expensive? And I would argue, at a time where we are now in the economy, that if you want to do video right, you're going to spend more money on it than you may have a few years ago, right? Mobile's always been that sort of mixed bag of tricks where, I think a lot of standards proponents will make it sound like video is just the same as CSS. We just have to account for all browsers. We'll add a few lines of code and boom, everything's done. No, it has real world implications because you have to now produce heavy duty assets that are supported for that, right? When we're talking about standards and how we can adapt content across different vendors and interpretations of video of a standard, then for the most part, you can make a solution that's not gonna break the bank. But when you're talking about video or any kind of multimedia asset that has to be reproduced in another format because one browser doesn't support it, you're talking about real time and real money, and even increased storage requirements, different delivery routes, and again, it really depends on what the task is that you have to accomplish. If all I need is, if a client comes to me and they just have one promotional video on their site and that's it, well, HTML5 is a no-brainer in my opinion. Like, you know, it can be a progressive download, it can be, you know, it's probably under 5 minutes. Anything that's a red flag for me for HTML5 video is not going to apply in that given scenario. So again, I'm going to try and do my best to, you know, keep the technologies honest to where they're going to perform the best, not where one's weaknesses are, you know, pitted against another's strengths. And some, you know, like I said, I don't want to get into just a flame wars even with myself even. Browsers are riddled with inconsistencies. That's one of the main reasons I got into Flash Player development when I started, when I first moved to Los Angeles back in '98. There were things that browsers couldn't do, and the things that they could do weren't very consistent with one API to the next. And so I gravitated to plugin-based development. That's changed in the sense that, you know, we have different audiences now that have different capabilities, and so we can't just rely on any one technology that we did before. Thus my statement that, to me, video production is just getting more expensive. And what resources your clients have available, thankfully, most of the things that we need for a video workflow are getting cheaper, whether it's like live. I mean, I can't believe it. I'm leaving this session early. I mean, I'm leaving the conference early because I was roped into helping a client stream 6 camera feeds at the Latin Grammys tomorrow night. So I'm leaving straight from this session to go to Vegas, and they're doing it on a shoestring budget. I don't even want to tell you how little money is being spent on this, but I'm pretty confident we'll pull it off. And 5 years ago, even not even 2 years ago, I don't think we could have pulled it off with the same budget that this client wants. So, you know, knowing what those you know, how much money you have available to produce the videos that you need for your experience. What internal resources, just even like, do you have video encoding specialists on hand that are going to, you know, be able to take care of everything? Do you need an external vendor to take care of encoding for you, storage requirements, all that kind of stuff you need to really gather before you determine how you're going to implement a video experience across technologies. And you want answers to come back as specific as possible. I don't like it if a client just starts rattling off like HTML5 like it's some, you know, cure-all or Band-Aid. Like, I don't want someone to tell me that they want to reach HTML5 audiences. HTML5 is an update to a specification in a language. That's like a client coming to me with a vague notion of, I want to reach English-speaking people. That's obviously not a bad thing to have as a goal, but at the same time, I want to get more specific. Most of the time, when a client comes to me talking about HTML5, they're most concerned about where the higher numbers of penetration and video viewing occur, which is the iOS, the iPad, the iPhone. Clearly is dominating and continuing to gather market share when it comes to the amount of video that's watched from a mobile device. You know, they're just getting the numbers there. So that's important, right? So if a client comes to me, and I'll switch now to a real use case that just launched. I've been working on it for 9 months, but oh no, did I lose it? I'm going to go over. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go over to my iPad. I'm like looking like AV, like they're going to do it for me, but I have to use this switch box. Where is it? Did it go? There it goes. So I'm on my iPad. So, you know, all my work comes to me through word of mouth. I mean, whether it's because I speak at conferences or referrals from my network of colleagues. And I also have free tools online. I have a bitrate calculator and a video comparison tool. I just found out Sorensen uses my video comparison tool to compare bit rates to one another internally. I thought that was pretty cool. But those free tools are on videorx.com. But you know, so this Ministry of Citizen Services from the province of British Columbia contacted me back in February. They had downloaded my bitrate calculator, and they just asked me a few questions like, could you give us some quick advice? And you wouldn't have any time to consult, would you? I'm like, well, it's my livelihood. Sure, I'll consult for you if you've got the budget to do what you want to do. And so they brought me in, and they basically came to me as if they'd watched a presentation that I've given in the past, like where it's like, no, you know, have tech specs ready to, you know, those answers that I was talking about before. They came to me right away knowing that they wanted Flash on the desktop because Flash has the penetration still on desktop, right? That mobile announcement has not necessarily much effect currently. You know, who knows how this might snowball into something else in Adobe's mission. But the Flash Player, in terms of Windows, Macintosh, and Linux, isn't going to go away anytime soon. It's still, you know, we still have a tremendous number of users who are using IE7, IE8 browsers that have huge market share, that have no video tag support. So Flash is going to be around for the foreseeable future as we're in this transition phase. And I don't think it's going to be a short transition phase. I think it's going to be, when I say short, in internet years, I think we're going to be dealing with non-video tag playback to significant audiences for enough time that we can't forget about it right now, and we have to work with it. So they came to me, not to get on a tangent, they said, we want to reach, oh, I'm losing my power here. I should make sure this doesn't turn off. But they basically wanted, they gave me the scenario. We're redoing our newcomer's guide, which previously was just a downloadable multilingual PDF. They had like 2 or 3 different languages, but you know, their immigration in British Columbia is huge, right? It brings a lot of money into the province, and they wanted to have a newcomer's guide for up to 11 languages, and that's what this I'll tweet this URL if you want to look at it later, but they wanted to have an iOS experience that worked. They really didn't care about Android as a mobile device. They said it would be a nice to have. BlackBerry, they said, would be a nice to have, but it wasn't a requirement. And for the amount of time that we had, and the budget that they had for managing resources, and again, they came to me as a very educated client. They already had an investment in Wowza server. And I'm like, that's great. Wowza can let us repurpose H.264 assets real easily across iOS and Flash and other platforms as well, like Silverlight. And that was before Adobe Media Server came out in 4.5 to support HLS. But Wowza is a cheaper approach for most of my clients anyway. So they had Wowza. They knew Flash for the desktop was the way they wanted to go. That's in line with my thinking. And they wanted to have a comparable, if not equal, experience on the iOS. So we were able to build it, but only on Apple's devices, right? The ability to do, the other want that they had was adaptive streaming. They were very knowledgeable about adaptive streaming. We picked 4 different bit rates to stream, to put into our adaptive manifests that Wowza serves up. So, you know, if I start playing this video right now, it's gonna probably start streaming I hope I didn't lose my connection, but we'll probably see, especially if I go full screen with it, I'll start to, oh, that's playing over there. It won't play full screen. But we'll probably see this resolve. The connection's spotty here, right? It goes up and down a lot. So we'll probably see this up-res as we're watching it. But there's 4 bit rates, 640 by 360 is the highest bit rate or highest resolution and bit rate that they wanted for this. And yeah, we may not see it up-res depending on my connection. So, but it's still playing. But more importantly, they wanted to also do something that we can't do in HTML5 very easily, and that is have a caption layer that's supported. Right now, if you I think this is going to be a growing need, and one, again, where such an early spec, like the video spec for HTML5, is woefully behind on. There's all these experiments right now on captioning, but if you look at everything that revolves around the video tag in the HTML5 space, it's all about div overlays, right? You just overlay stuff on top of the video. Well, most browsers, I would say every browser that I've tested against, they might change this, but they're not like Flash. You're not allowed to bring a display list full screen if you go full screen. So it has to all work internally on the video player. I can't just make a div layer magically appear in a true full screen environment. If I do that cheesy full window experience, which I make fun of with HTML5, sure, I can bring my div assets along for the ride, but let me go ahead and turn captions on for this. And at this point, what's happening behind the scenes is that we're now swapping out adaptive streams for progressive download, and the progressive download is now supporting the captioning tracks in H.264 that iOS supports. And again, that's very specific. You're not going to find many HTML5 browsers that support captions the way that QuickTime does in the iOS. So if I start playing this, this is a weird thing too with the iOS. If I only get the, oh, you can't even see my play bar, but I'll try and show it to you. It's funny, it's playing the video and giving me the control here because I'm doing the stream. But only when I go full screen do I see the native control for selecting a caption. So I'll just go ahead and pick Korean, and there's the Korean showing up. And so that's QuickTime doing the overlay from embedded metadata. Is it acting up on me here? But just again, I find it interesting just because from an HTML5 perspective, we hear often that complaints about Flash not being accessible, and we're in this position right now where I think more and more as our world continues to shrink, we need these kind of capabilities for these kind of engagements. Again, these aren't by any means situations that everyone needs to worry about, but if there's one thing I did well when I worked with Schematic, it was raise red flags about any technology that a potential client wanted to use, whether it was ABC with their first full episode streaming player that used Flash, and won an Emmy about how long ago was that when Lost first came out and they were streaming it online, to someone that's much smaller but has very real needs to get that video online. This is a really good blog post. Periscopic is a small company in Portland. Portland's got a lot of great interactive shops. And I'm already messing up mine. I already had this tab open. They made this post back in May of this year, but just sort of really showing you still, it's about eyeballs and who's looking at your content. They have some interesting visual graphics that I would encourage you to review and maybe even use in your own, if you ever have to make internal presentations to argue one technology over another, but just sort of showing you browser market share. If you look at all the browsers that are out there, including mobile and desktop, the most of them are going to support Flash. We only have 40%. Well, it's probably increased some from May, but we still don't have the same level of penetration with HTML5. And I think what's really important to keep in mind with percentages is if you want to use Flash history as a rule, like Sony, bigger clients that I've ever done jobs for, they wouldn't want to use a new version of the Flash Player until it reached 80% penetration, right? So why don't those same rules apply to other technologies, right? I mean, it's a 80%, again, it's really going to matter on your client and what market share you want, but just going on numbers, I do think it's a bit unfair that arguments start to change just because something is being propelled initially as a standard, even though the numbers aren't there yet for it. Again, I said what's important to understand now is that we're in transition, and a transition mode means that we have to support more than one technology. And I've complained about it already during my session, but to me, one thing that Flash has already gotten most of our viewers used to is a true full screen viewing environment, an immersive environment where we can do a lot of things with the video layer, not just watching the video. And we don't have this, what I would call a relatively simple perspective on user interaction with video that HTML5 doesn't have. You can see I sort of have the screenshot. If you haven't tried this yet, I'm running Google Chrome. Here's the Sublime Video Player, and this is an HTML5 video experience. And I would think that if I was not a technical person, I'm playing this video and I hit full screen, that I would get a real full screen. But this is what Flash did probably over 8 years ago when we didn't have full screen options in the technology. We could only, so we're sort of backtracking with some of our capabilities. Now, again, this is going to be a browser-dependent feature. Different browsers have different specifications. Most of the browsers support some way for the user to go true full screen with the video. But again, it's only taking the video layer forward. It doesn't take anything else. You want some kind of ad overlay or something like that. It would have to be embedded in the video stream, which wouldn't be too pretty. But we, again, it's just not a consistent experience. So that if I know my clients well enough from the past, showing them that, well, this isn't going to behave the same on one browser to the next. It doesn't matter how much jQuery you know or what kind of JavaScript you're going to do to control that layer. There's just going to be certain features that aren't available. So again, I'm not saying this means you can't use HTML5. It's just a limitation you have to make either yourself as a stakeholder be mindful of when you're deploying, or if you build solutions for other clients that they're not going to be surprised when you show them a video player and it can't do certain things consistently from one to the next. Another capability that has been used in the past, especially for marketing campaigns, is the ability to layer your video with a Chroma Key on top of dynamic runtime content. We still can't do this in HTML5. There's no video support for transparency. I can fade in and out a video object with the rest of my DOM in HTML, but this still remains something that's in the domain of the Flash Player since 2005. We still only have it available in the FLV VP6 format. H.264 as a specification does support a transparency layer, but it is not implemented by any of the modern browsers so far. So that kind of layering effect. And again, I'm presenting cases from real work that I didn't build shaveanywhere.com. That's where that screen grab came from. Maybe they stopped using this kind of alpha layered video when it comes to their mobile stuff. Embedded cue points. This is also back in the day and continuing with any Flash-based solution. The idea that we can have metadata at specific times within the video, whether it's streaming or progressive download, can be important and lead to a certain type of interaction. In this example, which, I don't know, do I have it over here? I have all my switch math. I'll just bring it up. I think I have it over here. Let me just load it up on this one real quick, because I think I cached it already. Yeah, here we go. This was an example I built for a book. This wasn't for a client, but I would demo this to clients to just give, during brainstorming sessions to show them sort of, things that were capable with an immersive video experience. I'll let this load real quick. I thought I had it cached. It's probably cached on that other one. But again, what you're about to see is, transparent video on top of a dynamically rendered text layer that is draggable and supporting all the data comes from the actual video itself and embedded cue points, because the words are very specific to the player, or here we go, it should pop up here. Oh, come on. Sometimes if my bandwidth, oh geez, pop up. Sometimes it takes, this is a older laptop, this presentation machine, so. Oh, I had it ready. That's a bad demo there. Sorry. I'll switch over to another machine if I have to. But just even based on the slide, I'll go back to the slide. Those words are draggable. You can drag them down into a text field and hit play. And it basically just creates a playlist of play points within the video based on the data that was retrieved from those cue points. So that's all I was trying to show in this failed. Let me try one more time. It could be because I've got too much open that it's not initializing it, but let me do it real quick over here. I'll just copy and paste it into this. Let's see. Oh man, of course I did. It's just easier for me to retype it here because I memorized it. I'll try it quick again. Oh, silence is the worst thing during a presentation. So I'll let it, it's going to reload it again. So this is a progressive download video. It's not streaming, so it's just loading it in the background. And once it initializes the video, it grabs from the metadata in the video all the cue points and all the information. So again, all those words are actually data points within the video file, and it creates this grid behind the video. I wanted to show you, I want to show it in action because it also demonstrates just blending modes that you have available in runtime technologies like Flash and Silverlight that we still don't have in HTML5. So the ability for me not only to have transparent video, oh come on, sometimes it's, I had it running on the other one. Oh geez, I'll switch over if I have to. But that's, again, one example, just one comparison. Mic, camera phone and access, mic, webcam and microphone access is still not something, IE10 is going to sort of start to demonstrate this feature. When IE10 releases, there's going to be a whole media API that lets us work with webcams, but this brings up a bigger point of just live streaming in general. When it comes to HTML5, we don't have solid, again, unless you're talking about an Apple-based solution, we don't have live streaming capabilities consistent from one browser to the next. That's largely going to be a codec issue, right? H.264 is the professional's choice when it comes to streaming these kind of things. and to have that implemented across all browsers isn't going to happen anytime soon. I like this grab because it's sort of it's an interesting scenario. Like, why am I talking to this young boy who's just showing his crotch? And it was a quick screen grab that I did on Chat Roulette, because probably most of you know what Chat Roulette is. It's just a random webcam sort of meeting room space. And that was actually at a streaming media event a while ago where I did that quick grab. I had to find something that it was really difficult to find a good snapshot that didn't have something crazy showing up. Because people go there for other reasons than what I was trying to do. So I already mentioned captions and subtitles. There's virtually no implementation in HTML5 right now that is a specification. There's all sorts of proposals, but we haven't seen anything bandied around it in terms of consistent support. I think that's going to really be a growth market for video as we move forward. Again, even here in the United States, whether it's having both English and Spanish or any other language that a specific region wants to offer. Canada's a bit more multilingual already with French and English, but for this engagement they needed 11 languages and 11 subtitle layers to display. Here's just a really quick list of other things that I sort of grouped into a big long list of things that are not consistent between HTML5 and Flash and Silverlight. Again, my biggest point here that I'm going to go into really for the rest of the session is adaptive streaming. Or any kind of a HTTP streaming period. We just don't have that support. I think things are going to start to get exciting as we see Android 3.0 dispersed on more devices in the months to come. As newer devices support HLS natively on Android, we're going to see less issues with this whole announcement that we just had with Adobe and Flash Player not being continued on mobile environments. Because for me, that's one of the biggest sticking points. That's not just a nice to have. I mean, streaming in general is something that we need in a mobile environment, right? Especially going between 3G and 4G. Sometimes we go down to 2G. A phone is going to benefit the most from an adaptive streaming experience. These other topics, yesterday the HTML5 roundtable really got stuck into this whole DRM thing, and I think DRM is one of those important things for a lot of stakeholders when it comes to video, but I agreed with some of the HTML5 sentiment that it's not a deal breaker for HTML5. The lack of DRM on a video on the internet, I don't think that's something to just sort of throw up your hands and be all down on HTML5. I think, quite frankly, one of the weakest arguments, because there are, again, with adaptive streaming technologies, I think it's a little bit more than just obfuscating URLs. You can protect content if you have some kind of streaming protocol in place. Obviously, it's easier to grab certain protocols than others from an end user point of view. And also the display list control is probably one of those things that is going to continue to nag people who want to create immersive experiences, right? We just can't layer anything on top of a video, especially if we go into a full screen environment. And what happens when you look at video on the smallest screens? It always takes it full screen, right? You can't just play video with layers on it in the smallest devices that we have. The iPad and tablets are an exception to that, but most phones, when you play video, take that video full screen out of whatever wrapper you've put in it. It doesn't matter how hard you try, again, in a language like JavaScript, to keep layers present. Of course, and let me just backtrack to Adobe's statement last night. Now, they're not giving up on mobile, they're just putting their focus now into native applications, right? So if you're going to create a branded player, a branded video player, you can still do that, on the iOS or Android with, writing something native in Java for Android, Objective-C for iOS, or if you want to try a Flash solution, you could author an app that's ported to a native application wrapper and see how it runs. So you can still create a branded player, just not in the browser, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that Adobe announcement is framed in that, or how different clients and video content distributors are going to either stop trying to play video so well in a mobile browser environment, or if they do, it's only going to be certain assets. Again, Apple's already set up this paradigm nicely for us, right? It's not like I watch Comcast Infinity in the browser on my iPad. I run the Xfinity app. It plays it in its own sort of environment, right? I'm not trying to work within a browser. So I think people are going to start to get more used to this idea that you watch video from a provider through their own app. And again, that's why I don't, this goes back to the HTML5 expense sort of category. It's just going to be more expensive, I think, right? For a small business to all of a sudden have to create a branded video player that runs as an app but not in a mobile browser doesn't sound as a simple solution. It's going to cost money to do something like that. Or you just accept the limitations that are there and grow with them. I mean, the Flash community was used to that. It's just that it's going to be one of those weird reset buttons, I think, for expectations that clients have in terms of what we can get away with in HTML5 that we've been used to that we've gotten used to other technologies providing, especially if they're fancy things. HTML5 developers are, this is just sort of a quick jab that regardless of what your background is, again, I think a lot of friends of mine that are HTML5 developers, they're only starting to understand what it is to manage huge video assets and the encoding of those assets to support a framework that they want to build. Flash people are used to this already, having different codecs and formats that they have to manage. So this is just sort of a thinly veiled attempt to promote that, you know, an ex-Flash developer, if you're looking for someone to create a video solution, is probably going to be able to pick up on your JavaScript API, on JavaScript APIs that are limited but available for video much quicker than someone who's just starting to learn that whole mindset of media delivery, right? That's all I was trying to make with that point. And this is where I'm going to sort of try and wrap up in a summary of, you know, where I think these technologies behave best, right? The video tag is a no-brainer when you're trying to reach smartphone and mobile devices. You know, unless you have to support some really old BlackBerry, and BlackBerry continues to be the bane of my existence for video delivery because I have clients that will still insist on some kind of awkward RTSP protocol delivering video to BlackBerries. It's like the IE7 of the CSS world. We're just waiting for it to go away, right? But for most smartphones out there, we have support for the video tag. Smartphones in general have their own native browser. I'm sure you can install other browsers on some platforms, but most natively installed browsers, and I'm talking like on the iOS and Android, are going to support H.264. So we don't have to worry about the WebM and Theora stuff coming into it unless there's some sophisticate that's decided to use something other than the default browser that's installed on the device. We're going to have all the basic video capabilities that people come to expect from video, like the ability to hit play and pause and stop and seek the video. So it's going to be great for that, you know, very straightforward video delivery experience. But the video tag out of the box across browsers does not support adaptive streaming. So if you want to have video that accommodates well to a fluctuating bandwidth environment, videos out of the box isn't going to be your best bet. And again, that's where you start to get into these more complicated deployment solutions like, oh, are we on the iOS? Great, let's deliver an adaptive HLS stream. Am I on a device that supports Flash Player still in a mobile environment? Great, let's use dynamic streaming and a Flash Player on that device. And you know, you can sort of take it down to its lowest common denominator. I'm on a device that only supports progressive download with H.264, so you know, and even then you can do some hacks to try and detect bit rate and deliver that experience. But you know, people aren't going to want to wait for just a one-size-fits-all asset in a mobile environment. I would argue too that immersive experiences, unless you're building a native application, it's going to be very difficult, right? HTML5 can be used to build native apps. If you didn't know, one of the latest things Adobe just did was they bought Phonegap, right? So Phonegap's a solution that can port HTML5 or you know, an HTML-based application to a native app. So you know, you can do things with HTML5 as a authoring language to resemble the kinds of things that you can do in other languages. But out of the box and in a mobile browser, it's not going to be your best bet for an immersive experience. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how audiences start to shift more from app-based view, or shift from mobile browsing to app-based specific functionality. I think that's probably going to be the biggest question mark, are the biggest question that a lot of stakeholders are going to answer as they move forward with video deployment. Flash Player is great if you're in a situation where you have, I would say these days, Flash Player 10.1 or higher. 10.1 would be the minimum required version I would look for the best video experience and support, because 10.1 supports adaptive HTTP, it supports all sorts of great reconnect goodness that we can do with the streaming servers to sort of make sure that our playback experiences aren't interrupted. We can make those immersive experiences because we have full display list control. We can do adaptive bitrate. We can even add content protection if you need that, but again, I don't really like to emphasize that, but it's there if you need it. But what's the big X? Where you don't have Flash, it sucks, right? I mean, what good is Flash if it's not running in the environment where you need it? You're going to have something that fills that gap. So, and I have a similar slide for Silverlight, right? Silverlight's going to be, even as a technology, if we see the name Silverlight go away, XAML and all the things that make up Silverlight are still at the core of a lot of Microsoft technology. So everything that any Silverlight developer or integrator's gotten used to isn't going away in terms of a technology and a capability, especially on Windows Phone devices. It'll be interesting to see how Metro changes that whole scenario. And it does pretty much all the same things Flash can do, but again, it's got the big red X like Flash does. If you don't have Silverlight or that runtime environment available that can execute all the great things that Microsoft wants to be able to do, then you're sort of lacking a solution on that platform, and you have to compensate and fill for it. I don't want to waste time. I have a few slides that I'm just going to gloss over. I'm probably already where I got to just wrap things up, but we still have this big problem with codecs and containers. We have essentially 3 deployments that we're using right now for video. We have HTTP streaming, and variants of it. We have HLS from Apple. Android's adopting it in future builds and current builds. I don't know if you know this, but my T-Mobile G2, Android 2.3 supports HLS. Not every 2.3 device supports it, but you'll be surprised how much HLS is already being integrated in the browser for HTML5, which I think is great, to be honest, because for me, adaptive streaming is the big must-have. Once we have that consistently in the major markets for HTML5, I think we're going to be in a better position. HTTP download is how probably, if you look at the numbers, most video is served as a progressive download just because it's the cheapest way to deliver video. But as longer form content comes online, again, anything that's over 5 minutes, that's my litmus for my decision point for it. Can this stay an HTTP download, and how's that asset going to be used ultimately? Is going to depend whether we need streaming or download. And of course, we still have a significant investment in RTMP, but I think eventually it will be phased out. RTMP, of course, being the protocol that's specific to the Flash player. What I like about, and this is where I'm just going to start, summarizing, different comparisons. In case you haven't seen adaptive streaming demoed, I just want to sort of bring up my quick example on my own. This is just a Captain America trailer that I'm going to play for you, and you can do this kind of thing in HTML5 on the iOS as well. Like I said, adaptive streaming, but this is a Captain America trailer playing, and what I need to point out over here, and I told the video guy I wasn't going to walk this far, but my player is automatically showing you the bit rates that my system created, and it's showing you which one's currently playing right now. I'm just over 1 megabit per second on this playback. But what I still like about RTMP versus HTTP, which this preview is using RTMP, is that I can do a very quick server check to know which bit rate to select right away. The way that most manifests work for adaptive streaming is that you have to sort of pick, as a content producer, what your initial bit rate's going to be. And that can be a big decision, right? Because it's the first quality that's streamed to your users. So if there's anything I would hazard to give you as advice for adaptive streaming is don't err on the lower quality side. Especially if your chunk sizes are small. It sounds sort of rude, but if your chunk size is 2 seconds, 3 seconds, that's the maximum length they're going to watch that initial chunk, and it's going to tell the browser or the client playing the video just what the bandwidth conditions are like. So I know by default a lot of streaming technologies use a 10-second chunk size, which That's a pretty long time to be stuck at one quality, especially on the initial chunk that's being streamed. So again, you have some control in an HTTP live streaming environment like you have in the iOS to pick what your starting bit rate is, but don't pick too far down on that spectrum. Just as I'm going to backtrack here real quick because I'm running out of. This is only a 2.5-minute trailer, but I can take this into manual mode, something that I can't do with HLS and JavaScript. It's hard to build this kind of demo with HTML5 because the APIs aren't there. But in Flash, I'm basically saying, oh, play this 424, and it just down-resed without a hitch, right? So I'm now looking at something that is smaller in terms of resolution, but I didn't see any buffering message. Got a little pixelated there. Let's go all the way down to 300. But the whole idea with adaptive is that it's adapting on the fly during playback, right? It's a really simple concept, but still one that I think is pretty amazing and something that we've gotten used to ever since the days of ABC's full episode player, where we had streams switching. At that time, it was Move Networks, but now we've got other technologies that can fill in. But there's no hiccuping here, and if I was playing the audio, you'd see that, like most people, anyone from Jan Ozer to myself, would recommend always keep that audio bit rate consistent so you don't hear any differences when they're switching, and it's going to up-res when it's buffered there. It's I don't think go up yet. Let's see if it should. Do I have enough bandwidth to force it? It might not go up depending on how the Wi-Fi is behaving, because I'm trying to force it to go, and it's only going to go if I've got the bandwidth to go, even when I try to force it. But that's just a really quick demo of adaptive streaming. And if you, this is a graphic from one of Apple's PDFs, but all adaptive streaming techniques have the same concept. You have an index file or a manifest that basically delineates or specifies what bit rates are available. Depending on what your deployment scenario is, you either have pre-chunked your files into those TS files for the iOS, and that's how they reside on your HTTP server, or you're using some streaming technology, whether it's something like Adobe Flash Media Server or Wowza Media Server, or even Microsoft's built-in IIS smooth streaming with support for HLS repackaging on the fly, and we're just, the server's generating those chunks on a session and request basis. But it's a pretty simple concept. The biggest and the benefits, of course, are that we have reduced wait time for loading and seeking because everything is nicely laid out for us in terms of the manifests. We don't have much of a buffering wait time. Once playback starts, we can pretty much know. I mean, again, if we're in an impossible scenario where I'm down to 50 kilobits per second, some really over congested network. Any video solution's likely going to falter at that point. Even a progressive download, you'd be stuck waiting for the rest of it to download or the next HTTP range request to come in. The best thing, of course, about HTTP versus RTMP or any other protocols that those segments are cacheable on proxy servers and edge servers all across these networks. So CDNs are going to love it, potentially reducing bandwidth requirements and costs on you as the provider or the content publisher. We can get through firewalls more easily with that. But there's bad things. There's increased encoding tasks, right? Any adaptive bit rates are going to require that you encode those additional bit rates and make decisions about what bit rates you support. You're going to have increased player development tasks. Like I said, it's not a consistent spec in HTML5, so the JavaScript that I've built for my player on VideoRx takes it from either Flash to HTML5 for adaptive streaming, and it's a complicated decision tree that you have to sort of navigate around streaming, because if you're running, let's say you're on a mobile device that doesn't have Flash, that isn't an iOS device, then what are you going to do? What if it's an early Android? Are you going to fall back to something that's progressive download, even though it might be a huge file, or are you going to make the encoding available for a progressive download? It's just one of those things that has to be added to the production. And I already mentioned this, so I sort of jumped ahead, but there's primarily 3 servers that I have used for deployment. Wowza is my preferred one, just from a cost perspective. Wowza can deliver across any all the streaming platforms that support it, and even IIS supports it. If you don't know how keyframe intervals work with adaptive streaming, this is where determining what your keyframe interval is going to be the guiding factor for what your chunk sizes are going to be for adaptive streaming. And there's a trade-off, right? You get better quality video if you have less keyframes. As people tend to pay attention when you have money on screen. So I visualized keyframes in dollar amounts, right? Fewer keyframes, you got higher quality $10 bills there instead of the $5 bills. Maybe I should use Benjamins instead. That would be really cool. Because that's who cares about $10 and $5? That's what makes it sound like videos for it's not worth a whole lot. Consistent audio settings I already spoke to. My general rule of thumb is using 48 kilobits per channel with AAC, even low complexity. I heard some advice yesterday from the guy, Rob at MTV Networks, that he only uses 48 with high efficiency. And these days, mobile, the only reason I like to push low complexity is that we still have low-end smartphones that might not decode HEAAC very well. It has higher CPU requirements, so if you're trying to be mobile friendly or just processor friendly, low complexity is going to be better on the CPU than any of the high efficiency AAC codecs. Using constant bitrate encoding versus VBR, that's sort of, again, old school advice. Just anything that you stream, you want to be as close to CBR as you can instead of varying your bit rates all over the place. The whole idea with the chunking process and any of these adaptive streaming techniques is that each chunk is relatively the same size. Variable bitrate could make one 2-second chunk bigger than the last one, and that defeats the whole algorithm that goes on with adaptive streaming players to be able to consistently predict what the bandwidth is to take on another resolution or another chunk or switch. This is something that's common for across players, is to just, again, low-level H.264 encoding stuff, but you want to make sure that every keyframe is marked as an IDR, or an instantaneous decode refresh frame, I believe is what it stands for. Most encoders are going to do this for you. If they don't expose it as an option, then you don't need to worry about it. Every iframe will be an IDR frame for the most part. Rosette Carbon Coder episode, they will let you determine if you want every other keyframe to be an IDR frame, but that's just going to mess up the whole refresh. Every chunk has to start with what I would refer to as the IDR iframe. And I'm just going to wrap with sort of, this is what I would recommend. This is what I do on VideoRx, and this is what I would recommend if you were going to copy what I do on VideoRx, how to approach deployment of video. This is probably the most important slide, and I'm not going to spend that much time on it. But basically, when my clients come to me for a video experience, I'm going to encode at maximum 3 sets of files, a bunch of H.264 main profile bit rates for adaptive bit rate, a bunch of baseline H.264 adaptive bit rates, and a WebM file if they want to have that fallback for that specific segment of the browsing audience. Not all my clients care about WebM support. I'll give them the pros and cons of having a WebM format available. We can't stream WebM yet. I know I've seen some experiments with Wowza working on it. I think even if it's not adaptive, if you can stream WebM, I think doing it adaptively is not going to be that difficult. But again, we relies on browser support, all the same stuff that people ragged Flash on, like hardware acceleration layers for a codec. We don't have that for WebM yet, so it's still a tricky. I think there's promise in the codec. It's just going to take time, just like HTML5 is going to take time in general. It's going to be a long road as we migrate and transition to different technologies. But where we are right now, I don't know about you, but I don't have a client that comes to me and say, oh, can you build a video solution that's going to work 3 years from now? No, it's not generally how it works. They want something that's going to work today and get the widest reach as possible at the, working within cost points. And you can see basically how those sets play out. If you're on a tablet, most tablets can play main profile up to a 1024 by 768 size. Tablet sizes are varied, but when I'm making manifests that come out of VideoRx, I essentially make manifests that are specific to each of the deployments. I make a manifest for desktop, I make a manifest for tablet, and I make a manifest for smartphone, or I just call it device for short, but they're all devices. But so there's essentially 3 manifests that I'll create for adaptive streaming, each having their upper end limits in terms of resolution that will play. And then like I said, I throw in a WebM file there as a progressive download option if a client wants it, and the browser support is what they're, it's a significant portion of their market share. Again, that's where, if you're on the fence about WebM, I would look at analytics, right? Google has free analytics that you can plug into a website. How many people come to your site without the Flash Player and with, a browser that would support WebM? If 2% is a significant number for you, then put it in. If it's not, then I wouldn't worry about it until maybe there's a penetration there for WebM. I think it's a great codec, to be honest with you. I think anyone who says that it's not as good as H.264. I don't know if they just haven't played with it well enough, but encoding tests that I've done with WebM, I've been really happy with it as a format. It's really just more an industry adoption question for me, where it's at or where it's not. And I'm officially out of time, I think. So I'm 5 minutes over, and I don't want to cut. I know there's a quick coffee break, but I'll just end with my contact information again, and I'll try and take a couple of questions, even though I'm a little over. Anyone have a?
Take them offline.
Oh, you want to take it offline? Oh, sure. Whatever works out. I'll be outside. I'll take your questions there. But thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.